Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something, well, really fundamental. Understanding those feelings of anxiety, depression, and anger.
Yeah, we've got some material someone sent in from an initial consultation they had.
Exactly. And the goal here is to pull out the key ideas about how our brains actually create these pretty powerful emotions.
And make it empowering, right?
Yeah.
So you can get a clearer picture of what's going on inside.
Without getting totally swamped in jargon or, complexity.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You, the listener, are looking for that quick, thorough understanding. This is kind of your shortcut to figuring out what happens when these feelings take over.
Okay, so let's dive in. The material highlights this really key difference in our brains. First, there's the conscious part, the prefrontal cortex.
That's basically the you that's listening right now, the thinking, interacting part.
Right, and then there's the more primitive bit, the limbic system.
The emotional center, you can say, with the amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, those structures.
And they play really different roles. Understanding that difference is, well, it seems crucial.
Absolutely. The prefrontal cortex.
Mhm.
That's your intellectual control tower. It assesses situations, plans things out.
Helps you make good choices, generally.
Yes, steers you towards positive outcomes, your logical command center.
Okay. Then the other side, this primitive brain, the limbic system. The amygdala is a big player there.
Huge. It's like the ancient alarm system. Fight, flight,
Or freeze.
or freeze, exactly. The rapid response unit for perceived threats.
And it's connected to other parts, too.
Oh yeah, tightly. To the hippocampus, that's where learned habits are stored. Maybe some not so helpful ones.
Mm-hmm.
And the hypothalamus, which kicks off the body's chemical and physical reactions instantly.
The material uses an example, doesn't it, to show how it should work?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
The polar bear example. Pretty extreme, but it makes the point.
So you see a polar bear.
And boom, anxiety skyrockets.
Yeah.
Your thinking brain kind of goes offline.
You're just reacting.
Purely, that primitive emotional brain takes over. Heart pounds, sweating, senses on high alert, all to help you escape.
And in that situation, that's exactly what you need. You'd be grateful for it.
Totally adaptive. But here's the kicker.
This is where it gets relevant to everyday life.
Exactly. The consultation points out that this same primitive response can get triggered when our anxiety just creeps up day to day.
Even without a polar bear in sight.
Right. And when that happens, our rational thinking can dip, and that emotional primitive brain takes charge.
Even when the threat isn't actually life-threatening.
It's like the alarm system is just a bit too sensitive sometimes for, modern life.
So when this primitive mind senses danger, and its idea of danger is pretty old school.
It activates those core protective states. Anxiety, depression, anger.
They're not random then. They have a purpose, evolutionarily speaking.
Deep roots, yeah. All aimed at survival in a much harsher world than most of us live in now.
Like depression, the material connects the symptoms wanting to withdraw, not interacting.
To ancestral behavior. If things were dangerous outside the cave, what did you do?
Stay put. Lie low.
Exactly. Conserve energy, avoid harm, wait for the danger to pass. Makes sense in that context.
And anger.
That's explained as like a primitive power-up, a surge of energy, aggression,
Getting ready to fight. Defend yourself.
mobilizing resources for survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else characterizes this primitive mind? There's a negativity bias, right?
Oh, definitely. It's wired to spot threats. Focus on the worst-case scenario.
For self-preservation, like the polar bear again, it's not going to weigh the pros and cons.
No way. It's shouting, danger, run.
Which is great for actual bears.
But less helpful when it's, a bank statement or an argument you need to handle.
That negativity bias can really skew things then.
Big time. And it's obsessional, too.
Obsessional. How so?
Well, if there was a predator nearby, you'd fixate on it.
Right.
Constantly scanning.
Okay, I see.
So, for people with repetitive negative thoughts, that's kind of the primitive brain doing its job, constantly reminding you of a perceived threat.
Even if the threat isn't real or immediate.
Exactly. And it's vigilant. Always on high alert if it thinks danger is around. Your internal security system cranked up.
But crucially, it's not intellectual.
Not at all. No logic, no creative thinking. It just relies on past patterns.
What worked before.
Yeah. If doing X helped you survive threat Y in the past, it screams, do X again. Even if the situation now is totally different, it's stuck in its ways, based on old survival blueprints.
Which brings us to negative thinking and anxiety. The material says anxiety isn't just caused by events.
But By our thoughts about the events, our interpretation.
That makes sense, because different people react differently to the same situation.
Precisely. That proves it's not just the external thing.
So negative thoughts, big worries like money or jobs, or smaller things like, I don't know, a meeting.
They're the fuel. They create the anxiety.
And the consultation suggests you, the listener, should think about your own patterns here.
Yeah. What are your recurring negative thoughts? The ones that reliably trigger that anxious feeling.
There's also that point about imagination versus reality.
Oh, that's fascinating. The mind struggles to tell the difference sometimes.
So if you keep imagining a meeting going badly...
Even if you intellectually know it'll probably be fine, your brain reacts to those imagined failures as if they happened.
Wow. So you've already had like 10 terrible meetings in your head before the real one even starts.
Exactly, which ramps up the anxiety beforehand. Even if the actual event goes smoothly, you've already lived the negative experience mentally.
Okay, so how do we process all this negativity? The material brings in the stress bucket idea.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. Picture a bucket where all those negative thoughts, worries, stresses just accumulate.
And they get converted into anxiety.
That's the idea. But thankfully, we have a way to empty it.
Sleep.
Specifically, REM sleep. Rapid eye movement. The draining stage.
Right. What happens during REM?
The brain processes the day's emotional stuff. It moves experiences from the emotional memory parts in the primitive brain to the narrative memory parts in the intellectual brain. It sort of refiles them, takes the emotional charge out.
Gives you perspective, control.
Exactly. Like you go to bed furious about something someone said.
It's in there.
We all have. But after a good night's REM sleep, you wake up and think,
why did I get so worked up about that?
Precisely. That's the stress bucket getting emptied. Things look more rational.
But what if the bucket's overflowing? Too much stress.
Ah, yeah, the material covers that. Two potential problems. First, REM is only about, say, 20% asleep.
Okay.
If the bucket's too full, trying to force more REM doesn't work well. You might wake up feeling awful, agitated, can't get back to sleep.
So the bucket doesn't actually get emptied properly.
Right. The second issue is processing a huge amount of stress takes a ton of energy.
So even if you do get more REM, it's exhausting.
It can be, yeah. And that exhaustion can actually make you feel more depressed, less in control intellectually. It becomes a bit of a vicious cycle. Wake up stressed, less control, more stress.
Okay, so that naturally leads to solutions. How do we manage this? Get back that intellectual control.
Well, the consultation suggests a few things. Limiting the negative input, for one.
Like less doom scrolling, maybe?
Could be part of it. Also, consciously focusing on the positives in your life.
And good sleep habits, obviously.
Crucial. But that positive focus ties into something really deep, our ancestral reward system.
Reward system, how does that work?
Back in the day, doing things essential for survival hunting, gathering, connecting with the tribe.
Positive actions.
Positive actions, positive social interactions, even just positive anticipation. These things felt good.
Because they triggered something in the brain.
Exactly. A neurological reward. The release of positive neurotransmitters. Feel-good chemicals.
Which motivated them, made them feel capable.
Yes. Feelings of well-being, bravery, drive. It helped them cope with the hardships. The brain basically said, this is good, do more of this.
So we can tap into that today.
By mimicking those patterns.
What?
Positive activity, get moving. Positive interaction, connect with people meaningfully. Positive thinking, consciously directing your thoughts.
And doing that consistently helps create more of those beneficial brain chemicals.
A steadier flow, yeah, which helps balance things out.
And the flip side, feeling down reduces them.
Generally, yes. Low mood, inactivity. Production can dip. And chronic stress. Just being constantly busy and anxious.
That floods us with stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol.
Right. Great for escaping that polar bear, terrible for dealing with emails and deadlines day after day.
So it's about getting back control from that primitive stress response to handle daily stuff better.
That's the goal, regaining intellectual control.
Now, the consultation also mentioned trance. That sounds a bit out there.
Not really, not in the way they mean it. They're not talking stage hypnosis.
Okay.
It's about everyday states of focused attention, like when you're totally absorbed in a task or watching a movie.
Or driving a route you know really well, kind of on autopilot.
Exactly. Or even during exercise sometimes. That focused state.
What's happening then?
It's like the conscious and subconscious minds align for a bit. They come together.
And that gives access to what?
The subconscious mind's resources, which are vast. It's often used in therapy, apparently, to help facilitate change or insight.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What are the big takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, the two main brain parts, the thinking prefrontal cortex and the reactive primitive limbic system, that's fundamental.
Understanding how that primitive stress response, anxiety, depression, anger, is wired for survival, but can get triggered inappropriately now.
Right, and its characteristics. The negativity bias, the obsessional nature, relying on old patterns.
And the massive role of negative thinking in actually creating anxiety. It's not just events, it's our thoughts about them.
Definitely. Then the stress bucket analogy and how REM sleep is supposed to empty it.
But how overload can cause problems with sleep and energy.
Yeah. And finally, the power of positive actions, interactions, and thoughts to tap into our natural reward system.
Generating those good neurotransmitters that help us feel well.
It all connects. Understanding these mechanisms, these ancient roots of our feelings.
Can make you feel less controlled by them.
Exactly. It offers a framework. It can be really empowering, just knowing why your brain might be reacting a certain way. It's not just random.
Okay, so that leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over.
Given what we've discussed, this natural, primitive stress response,
how might you start noticing, really noticing, when your primitive brain is kicking in during your day?
and once you notice it, how could you consciously try to engage your intellectual brain more?
To navigate things with, I guess, more awareness, more intention.
Something to reflect on your own thought patterns, how they shape your feelings, and maybe, just maybe, how you could start shifting them.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.